the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody to the Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, first presidential debate night. Are you excited? Thrilled, I'm sure, right? Aren't you happy that I'm providing you with an alternative entertainment so that you don't have to watch this stupid debate? Anyway, I was going to live stream the debate and comment on it, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. I could speak over them. I could stop it every 5 seconds when I got really angry at what they were saying and comment on it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch it, I guess, tomorrow, edit out the scenes that I want to talk about, and just play you highlights. So indeed, I don't think you should watch the debate tonight. I think you should skip it. I think you should wait until tomorrow and then watch the highlights that I present to you and comment on. I think it's going to be a lot more fun that way. I think it'd be a lot more educational that way. I think you'll be able to decide a lot better about what you should and shouldn't do that way. So, please answer my $5. I don't see any $5 question, Frank. Where's your $5 question? I see nothing. All right. So that's why I'm not doing debate tonight. It would have been too much, and the format would have been bad. Maybe after the show, if I'm in the groove and my wife wants to watch the debate, so maybe I'll sit down and watch the rest of the debate and tweet on it. So I might tweet the debate and then tomorrow give you highlights of who I think is the bigger loser among the two. Although I think they're both pretty bad, so that's going to be hard to tell. I think they each have to do something very different tonight in the debates. Just my a few thoughts on this. Basically, Biden needs to show that he's alive. I mean, that he is, that his mind is functioning a little bit. Doesn't have to be super sharp. He doesn't have to be fantastic. He doesn't have to be, he shouldn't get into back and forth with Trump. If he does, he'll look pathetic. He needs to just show that he's breathing, that there is somebody there, that we're not just automatically electing Kamala Harris to the position of president. And if Biden can show he's alive, and if Biden can show that he's somewhat there's some cognition there, not too much, but just something. We don't expect too much of our presidents. Then I think the debate doesn't matter, right? I think the only, I think Trump's goal in these debates is going to try to show that Biden is basically not there. He's lost it. He's senile. He can't do anything, right? And that's the only real issue remaining. And everybody knows who they are, what they are. I think most people have decided. A lot of people have already voted. I think Biden is leading by a fairly large margin, and it's his to lose. And in that sense, I think the only way he loses is if he comes off as unconscious, right? Comes off as a 77-year-old senile empty vessel. So if he can talk, if he can respond, if he's semi-intelligible, if he has a goof here and there, nobody cares, because even when he was 30 years old, he flubbed around. He was unintelligible half the time. So all he has to do is just, stay the course and not done anything too dramatic. And Biden will go after Trump on the tax thing. We'll see how Trump responds. I mean, Trump will say it's all fake news. I doubt that it's fake news. I'm sure it's true. I think his response to Hillary was the right response, but not a good response if you're running for president. But the right response, if you remember, when Hillary accused him of not paying taxes, he said he didn't pay taxes because he was smart. Right? And it's true, right? I mean, the whole point of our tax system is to provide you with loopholes so that you can find ways. And if you hire good accountants, and if you're smart, if you pay the accountants well, then their job is to prevent you from paying taxes. And in real estate, actually, the whole way real estate is taxed is to provide you with an opportunity not to pay a lot of taxes. So anyway, it's going to be, I mean, the debate's going to be boring. I didn't watch the Trump-Hillary debates. I couldn't bring myself to do it. They were so, I found both of them so despicable, so beneath contempt, that to sit and watch them for 90 minutes and to watch like Trump try to intimidate her and her respond and the insults and the anti-intellectual back and forth was just too painful. But now that I've got a YouTube show, I will sacrifice. I doing that a lot lately, sacrificing for you guys, and I will watch a debate just so I can analyze it for you. Frank says he submitted a question. Just to ask, I don't see it, so I probably didn't catch it. So if you want, just submit the question now without a super chat attached to it, or attach it to $1 or something, and I'll answer it today. Okay, so we have a generous supporter of the show, Troy, who often comes in and contributes quite a bit on the super chat. He's from Australia, so he's Australian. I don't think he's here today, unfortunately, but Troy wrote me an email asking me some questions about the application of virtues and how to apply virtues and how to practice them. I'd say one question is about justice and another question is about honesty. And I thought, and he said, look, if you can take both the questions and turn them into a show, I will give you $1,000. The $1,000 that I take for people to kind of determine the topic of upcoming show. And and they fit together nicely, and it's kind of a little change from politics, and it's a topic I'm actually quite passionate about because I think it has real applicability to your life. It's something you can do tomorrow. It's something you can apply and make your life better almost immediately. It's not a super abstract topic in philosophy, and it's not something in politics that none of us have much control over anyway, but it's actually on the application of morality, which I find really, really interesting and fun and a lot to talk about. That is, how do we apply the objectivist virtues? How do we apply the virtues we have learned from Ayn Rand to our lives? How do they apply to particular circumstances and particular situations in our life? Right? That is what we're going to devote our show today, with particular emphasis on one topic, which is how to judge people, which is really an issue of justice, and the other topic is about lying, which is really an issue of honesty. Wanda Freeman said, "It's not a sacrifice to watch a debate if you get paid for it." Of course not. I'm kidding. Anytime I say I'm sacrificing, I'm kidding. I do not sacrifice. I don't sacrifice for any of you. I don't sacrifice for people I love. I don't sacrifice. I try not to sacrifice, period, ever. Don't believe in it. I'm a trader, value for value. So, it could be a sacrifice even if you get paid for it. You might feel like you're not getting paid enough. You might, there might be a lot of reasons why it could still be a sacrifice even if you get paid for it. But in this case, it is not. I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I enjoy watching a horrible debate so that I can rip it to shreds and share my insights. Maybe it'll even be funny. Maybe my humor. I don't know. With all of you. So that is all a plus, not a minus. So, yeah, whenever I say I'm sacrificing for you or for the show or for something like that, I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. So, yeah, I have a good friend where part of the joke is, when we're doing something for each other, all right, I'll sacrifice for you, but just this one time. And of course, he's a good friend, so nothing I'm doing is a sacrifice, right? A sacrifice is giving something up for a lower value, right? Giving a higher value for a lower value. You're losing. A sacrifice is a loss to you. I don't believe in losing. Now, I lose sometimes, but never intentionally. Never intentionally, right? So losing can often be an accident, can often be a mistake, can often be just because that's what life throws at you. But to intentionally lose, I'm against that on principle, right? So I'm against sacrifice on principle, all right? What's your video like? Is the video choppy? Anyway, let me know. All right, let's take a look. So we're going to start today with basically, it's a question that came up in the context of the monuments as well. What monuments should we be tearing down? Is it appropriate to bring down monuments? Or more broadly, how should we judge? How should we judge historical figures? And I'm going to broaden it to how should we judge people who are alive in our life and outside of our life and in the culture. How should we judge people who are mixed? Who might have done something incredibly important, but at the same time might also have some significant flaws or might have really, really bad ideas or things like that. So how do we judge individuals? And the monument stuff, how do we judge Thomas Jefferson, given that he was a slave owner and did not free his slaves, but given all the value we received from him? And Troy listed a bunch of these, and I'll just read his question, just so we make sure we answer his question, and then we can broaden it from there. Is there a company or institution that if there is a company, an institution that provides huge value to the public, but the CEO, representative, creator of that company has horrendous moral values, should support for that institution, his achievement, be canceled? Or do you think that if in real time that person's lack of virtue would cause the company to naturally not succeed? History has shown many instances where people have provided massive benefit to the world, but it became known, often later, of their personal flaws. Please correct me if I'm wrong about the following. And the fact is, I don't know about the following, so I'm going to read what he said, but I don't know if these are true. Some of them, I really don't know if they're true. Right? Alexander Graham Bell pushed for eugenics of the deaf. Alfred Hitchcock, an asshole and sexual predator. I don't know any of these. Henry Ford, massive anti-Semitic. Yeah, I mean, there was some sympathy there to the Nazis, that I know. Charlie Chaplin, openly a pedophile? I've never heard that. Richard Feynman, misogynist, sexist? Don't know. Rupert Kipling, racist? Yeah, there's certain elements of that. Oliver Cromwell, sociopath, genocide on Irish Catholics. Steve Jobs, asshole. Martin Luther, anti-Semite. Thomas Edison, stealer of ideas and Nazi supporter. Again, I don't know if that's true. Either one of those. Teddy Roosevelt, racist. Teddy Roosevelt, that's just a beginning. I wouldn't put Teddy Roosevelt in this company. Teddy Roosevelt is a bad guy. I may be wrong about some of these, but it's almost as if these people who became forces of good, or are viewed generally as good for whatever they achieved, were in fact horrible people. It is a little depressing to think that only really bad people who have no sense of introspection are often the ones who make massive changes for good to our lives. I hate the idea of cancel culture and retrospectively canceling people from history considering their achievements and moral standard. Can you think of any people who now, in real time, are providing great benefit to the planet but are horrible people? How important is it to be good? Is there a point at which their value to our existence trumps their personal belief? All right, I see. Jennifer has a question. That's great. Yeah, keep up the questions on topic. It's good. It's good that we keep for now the super chat questions on topic, so we don't, because there's a lot to talk about. All right, so let's take this apart a little bit, because I think Troy, there's some mixing up of some issues. I think that there's at least a couple that I see here. Right. So the first issue is, how do you judge historical or current significant people who are making real progress, whether they're businessmen, politicians, poets, artists, that are making real contributions to your life and to mankind, if you will, but that it turns out have suspect moral character, right? Suspect moral character. And how does one judge a person like that? And the two contexts: one's history, and one's the context of today, somebody you know today. And I would broaden that to how do you deal with people, even in your personal life, who are mixed, who you might get immense value from and pleasure from in one part of your life, but who you massively disagree with or have problems with in other parts of life, or you might even suspect that they're immoral in some aspect of their life. How do you deal with that in terms of your own life? How do you handle that? So I think the two things that have to be separated here. One is that Troy brings up, because that's one, is how do you judge these people? Second part is, what happens to these people? That is, Troy is asking, how important is it to be good? Is somebody who provides a great benefit to the planet but a horrible people, is their life horrible or is their life good? And then what's the value then of being good in a sense? Right? Should you, looking at a person like that, said, well, he's given a lot to the planet, to the world, to whatever, to values, so I don't care that he's a bad person. How do we relate to that? So there are a number of different levels. Let's start with the person themselves. I think people who are mixed have cannot be consistently happy. They cannot consistently achieve their values. They cannot consistently be one, if you will, with the world, be whole with the world, be whole with what they actually believe, what they actually hold. So people who are mixed are mixed. They're, in a sense, at war with themselves. On the one hand, they, in order to produce and create and make and be the kind of productive geniuses that they are, in order to do that, they must practice certain virtues. They must take reason seriously. They must practice rational thinking. They must be independent. They must follow the objectivist virtues to some extent, because that's what achievement results from. It results from the use of human reason and applying it to the problem that you see in front of you, which is a moral virtue. So on the one hand, their mind is acting appropriately, consistent with reality, and consistent with their nature as human beings. And yet, in another area of your life, in their life, whether they're liars or they're predators or they're abusers in some form or another, in some way or another, they are hostile to reality. Their values are now conflicting with the nature of reality, the nature of their own consciousness, the needs of their own consciousness. And while their predatory behavior might appease a whim, an emotion, satisfy an itch, it actually undermines their capacity of being fully human. So you've got these two aspects of their life that are clashing against one another. One is a life of reason, honesty, integrity. Again, whatever level they take their life seriously. And the other is a life of undermining those specific virtues. A life of hiding, of lying, of deceiving oneself and others, and others, right? And that creates ongoing internal conflict, creates stress, it creates anxiety, it creates everything that prevents one from, being able to fully enjoy, fully embrace, have life and have it fully integrated into who and what you are. You're living a conflict of values, a conflict of the core of what it means to be human. I mean, the rational and irrational are alive in something like that in your life. And compartmentalizing it, keeping the irrational separate, keeping the irrational away from the rational, from the productive, from the creative, is effort, is strain. And the irrational is anti-life. It means moving away from joy, happiness, and all the virtues that make the rational life possible. So it's constant conflict. It's constant disagreement, and the extent to which you devote yourself primarily to that area in your life in which you are productive and rational. To that extent, you can achieve the happiness. To the extent that you are devoting more time to the irrational, to that extent, you will be unhappy and, fall apart. So it's not an accident that many of the productive geniuses, the Henry Fords and people like that, who that was the productive work was that place in their life where they were rational, where they were pro-life, where they were actively engaged in activity that promoted their own life and thus promoted their own happiness. They were workaholics because that's where they got the real good stuff for their life. And if Henry Ford had devoted as much of his energy to promoting anti-Semitism and to promoting, Adams says that Henry Ford was a friend and enabler of both Stalin and Hitler. I'll take his word for that. It's he's got a link to a document about it, so I don't doubt it. But I haven't done the historical research. To the extent that he would have dedicated his life just to that, nobody would have ever heard from him. About him. Nobody would have cared about him, and he would have been a miserable, pathetic little human being. The fact that he devoted most of his energy, most of his time, most of his effort, most of his thinking to production, where he was focused on reality and not on bias, emotion, fear, hatred, is why I think Henry Ford could have survived. I doubt that he was a particularly happy human being. Because of that conflict, that inner conflict, particularly when an inner conflict about morality makes it impossible to actually attain happiness, to actually feel that oneness with the truth, with reality, with a happiness in a state of being. In your life. We're getting a lot of super chat questions. I'm going to have to find a way to manage all these. But I see they're on topic, which I'm happy about. All right, good questions. All right, I'm going to get to all these questions. Don't worry. So I think it's right to assess that people that are mixed suffer the consequences of the mixture. People who are mixed don't live consistently happy lives. It doesn't mean they can't achieve. It doesn't mean they can't be joyful in the moment or even happy during stretches of their life, but they can't be consistently because their bad values, their bad behavior, their bad ideas undercut their ability to achieve the kind of happiness that many of them deserve because of their productive genius. Now, how do you judge somebody like Henry Ford? Well, I think the way you judge him from an historical perspective is Henry Ford was a genius, a productive genius. And he had rotten ideas. And I think it's important to include both, to study him, to admire him as a productive genius, and to say, but beyond that, I don't like him. It was not good. And to put him in the right context. So if there's a statue of Ford, if the statue of Ford is to celebrate him as a man, then tear it down. But if the statue of Ford is to celebrate him as a industrialist, as a revolutionary producer, as a man of business, production, in the context of his automobiles, then yeah, he's a hero when it comes to that. Ford is the man who basically revolutionized not just the auto industry, but really manufacturing, right? He revolutionized manufacturing, revolutionized automobiles, made automobiles cheap enough for the masses to be able to own them. He did this during the Great Depression, during a time where people didn't have a lot of money. And yet he managed to create an amazing company that still survives to this day, although you could argue wouldn't have if not for government bailouts, but that clearly was a leader in innovation and in production and in changing the world in dramatic fashion. And for that, he should be recognized. It would be bizarre when a man like him who changed the world for us, made the world a better place for us, if we can't acknowledge his genius because he's also a creep. He was also an anti-Semite. He was also these other things. Now, those things are worth mentioning so that we don't fall into the error of, admiring somebody when he doesn't deserve it, for things that he doesn't deserve admiration for. But we can separate out Ford. So you wouldn't put Ford's statue in a museum that honored great character, but you would put Ford's statue in a museum that honored great industrialists. And in his biography, you'd mention that, yes, he was a bad guy in these other realms. So, again, I am not an expert on Ford. I do know he's been accused of anti-Semitism. I do know he was supportive of the Nazis, but I haven't done a lot of research on it, and I'm assuming that a lot of information that is being provided here on the chat is accurate. If you take, and this is the sense in which we should evaluate the Founding Fathers. If what was celebrated about Thomas Jefferson was that he was a slaveholder, and that was his achievement in life, and that's what he was remembered for, and that what he was. That's his primary contribution and achievement and value in life. Then, of course, you wouldn't build any monuments for Thomas Jefferson. Right? But if Thomas Jefferson is remembered for the great value that he produced, which is the Declaration of Independence, his contribution to the thinking behind the Constitution, his contribution to the thinking behind the whole American system of government and American governance, his contribution as president, his contribution as a thinker in his letters to Adams and in other venues, and his influence on the cultural and intellectual life of early America. The contributions of Jefferson to us, to our lives, to the world in which we live in are astounding. And yes, he did not free his slaves when he should have. And that's a flaw. But in the context of the massive values he has, it's a flaw that we don't overlook, that we don't ignore, that we take into account when we describe his great genius and his great heroism and his great contribution. And we say, unfortunately, he was also a slave owner and did not live consistent with his own beliefs 100% and probably suffered the consequence of that in some degree, to some degree. Right? And I think you can go through all of these people. You cannot, I mean, a lot of people, we just don't know what their private lives were. What you have to do is look at the good. I mean, when you're evaluating historical figures, we'll get to evaluating or people who, like if you look at, I don't know, Steve Jobs, right? I think Troy said Steve Jobs was an asshole. Well, I don't even know what that means, right? Who was he an asshole to? He was an asshole to certain of his employees, but did that being an asshole produce better results from them? Did it elevate their performance? I don't know. I didn't work for Steve Jobs, and I would be fearful of, I would think it was not objective for me to try, based on some biographies that I read, to judge Steve Jobs as an asshole. I don't know Steve Jobs' character. All I know is his productive genius. And what I have seen are videos of him talking about his company, talking about his products, talking about his views about the world. And in every one of those videos, I leave impressed. I leave admiring him and his mind and his values and his focus. So Steve Jobs to me is a hero, and yeah, he might have been harsh to some employees. To me, of all the things, that is pretty minor. That is pretty minor. Now, who knows? Maybe one day we'll find out that he had some really horrible thing that he was doing on the side, right? But you can only judge based on your knowledge. And my knowledge, from the knowledge I have of Steve Jobs, there's very little to qualify my admiration for him. I mean, there is the whole episode of him, treating his pancreatic cancer with juices by juicing himself, which is like you want to slap the guy. So there certainly was an irrationality in him. But overall, he was a guy who I think lived what he preached, who worked hard, had real values, fought for those values, was passionate about values, struggled with dealing with other people. It's why he was fired from his first thing at Apple. But learned from his failures. That's a great virtue, by the way. Learn from his failures. You can say the same thing about Thomas Edison, about a lot of these people. They learn from their failures and they keep going. You have to be careful when you call people sexual predators and sexist and misogynist. Part of it is, and I don't know. Again, I don't know the specifics. Pedophile, I'd be very careful. How much do we know? What do we really know? You have to bring in some level of cultural context, right? Slavery is evil, particularly for somebody who wrote that all men are created equal and they have inalienable rights, right? So it's been written. He knew he had to evade not to apply it to slaves. But there are certain cultural norms about sex, about how to treat one another, that are contextual and time related, and the behavior does not rise to the level of slavery. Now, again, if you're raping people, then rape has always been bad and always will be bad. But the way you talk, it's not clear to me that we should evaluate people today based on our standards for behavior 150 years ago, 200 years ago, in the context of their time. We shouldn't use our context of our time to evaluate them in the context of their time. If, at least at the time, there was ambiguity about it. So I think, again, to the extent people are irrational, to the extent that they're not moral, to that extent, they suffer the consequences. To that extent, it harms, and harms you, most importantly, your ability to be happy, your ability to have integrity, your ability to have complete integration of your values and your life and ultimately your emotions and just the way you live your life to be a complete integration. Right? And in evaluating them, we're not evaluating whether they were happy or not. We're evaluating whether we admire them or not, how to judge them. And I think we look at what they wrote, what they did, what they produced, what they created, the value it provides us and other people we care about, the value it provided civilization. And if that value is immense, then they're heroic in that activity. And if they had flaws or they did bad things in other areas of their life, then that needs to be an asterisk. That needs to be something that we recognize, something. So I admire, Alfred Hitchcock as a director. I think he was one of the greatest directors ever. I love his movies. I think anybody who wants to study film should study his movies and see what made them great and focus on the attention that the attention to detail that he had. And he was a perfectionist, and I respect and admire that. But if it turns out that he really was an asshole and did, and was a sexual predator in some sense or another, then clearly I don't admire him in that part of life. But if you're doing a museum on film, I would include him. I would definitely include him. I do think there is a level of depravity. There's a level of depravity that is such that you couldn't be a productive human being if you held it, right? So, I don't think you can find a productive genius who's also a serial killer, who also has, a torture chamber in the basement of his room. You can find mediocre people who do have that, mediocre in terms of production. But I think there's a level of depravity that is so bad that it makes being super competent in some other realm impossible. I think that is true. And I wonder if there are counterexamples to that. Somebody says Bill Cosby. I don't know. I wouldn't put Bill Cosby up there with the productive geniuses that we've talked about. But it does seem like he was pretty depraved in his private life. So I think there's a level of, I don't think Hitler could have been a great painter, right? There's a reason why Hitler was a bad painter, or at best a mediocre painter, right? I don't think if he'd been a great painter, he would have been Hitler. Right? There's a level of evil, a level of depravity, where you cannot integrate the good with it. It doesn't go together. And generally, to me, if somebody is a productive genius, then I admire him for being a productive genius. And generally, I think positive of them unless I know something real that is a negative. And this is my argument about Silicon Valley, and has been, for a long time. I, in a sense, forgive them their politics because of their productive genius. It frustrates me to no end. It's sad. But I still admire Jeff Bezos and the people who run Google and the people who run, and even Zuckerberg at Facebook. I admire them for what they've achieved, for what they've done. It's amazing. It's amazing what they've done. And they've got the wrong politics. Now, partially, I understand why they have the wrong politics, because the Republican Party is so awful in so many things that make it impossible for rational, science-oriented engineers to really, be excited about them. But they are hurting my life by being, having the wrong kind of politics. And they could be benefiting my life if they had the right kind of politics, not Republican, better than Republican. So it frustrates me. But I admire their virtue. I admire their productivity. I admire what's good about them, what is good to admire. And lastly, there are bad people who have no positives. And this is my case for why I'm for taking down the Confederate statues. Because there's no virtue in General Lee. He fought to preserve slavery, an evil institution. He fought to preserve the South's secession, which is treason. There's nothing that he did that you could say, yes, but he changed the world in this positive way. The same with Calhoun, the same with the intellectuals of the South, the Confederate leaders. There's no virtue that you balance off against maybe they did something bad in their life. And we're talking about a substantial evil, not just owning slaves like Jefferson did. That's bad enough. We're talking about people who fought for slavery. We're talking about people who advocated for slavery. We're talking about people who promoted slavery, who wanted to expand slavery, who wanted to bring slavery to the rest of America, who were willing to defeat the non-slave states in the name of slavery. So these are bad people. And there's no virtue there. There's no positive. There's nothing to overcome that evil. So you judge them as such. And you have nothing to do with them. And you don't build up statues for them. And you're not pulling down the statues because they owned slaves. You're pulling down the statues because they promoted slavery, fought for slavery, advocated for slavery. And the same is true for the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag just doesn't represent a bunch of states. It represents states that actively supported slavery. And that's what the flag represented. It represented the separation from those states who rejected slavery. It's all it means. Yeah, I mean, Lee, you could argue General Lee didn't support slavery, but he still fought for it, which is in some sense even more bizarre. He fought for it for patriotic reasons. Blood and soil, which makes him despicable. Absolutely despicable. You should watch to see how a Virginian should have responded or could have responded to the Civil War. You should watch the movie Shenandoah with Jimmy Stewart. Right. All right, let's see. You have an idea? So, I think you cancel people who are overwhelmingly evil or overwhelmingly wrong, or where the evil way outweighs any benefit they might have. But people who clearly the pluses way outweigh any negatives that they might have. You focus on the pluses. You benefit from the pluses. You use the pluses. Like Rupert Kipling, imagine not reading his poems. Because yes, I mean, there's reason to believe he was a racist. And he talks about a white man's whatever. Right? One line in If I don't like, but what, am I going to stop reading If because I don't like one man? One line? No. The benefit I get from reading If way outweighs whatever wrong ideas he might have had. And the same is true there's no value in Martin Luther and no value, in my view, in Teddy Roosevelt. And maybe, Troy, if you're interested in why I think that, you can ask me separately. But Thomas Edison, Kipling, Steve Jobs, Fairman, Chaplin, Ford, Hitchcock, Bell, all are heroes with flaws. With flaws. Heroes in the context of their productive activity. Right? Now, the bigger challenge is dealing with people that you meet, your friends, your acquaintances, your family, who are mixed. And there you have to be ruthlessly selfish. You have to recognize that if your friends, family, people you know, exhibit clearly immoral behaviors, that is harmful to you. It is dangerous to you. Now, it depends on the immorality. It depends on its extent. But if you come to identify that this is harmful to you, I mean, there's some things that are immoral, that are small, that are not threatening to you. They threaten their life, but it doesn't really impact you as much, right? Always keep an eye out. People who lie to themselves is bad, but for you, it's worse if they're lying to you, to other people, right? And you want to avoid people who are harmful to you. And you need to be ruthlessly selfish in this regard. You need to figure out in your relationships with other people what is in your self-interest, what benefits you, what is right for you. And people have mixed souls, mixed values, mixed ideas. But, you don't walk away from everybody who has a mixture because, again, in the area where you interact with them, at work, going to the opera, doing some other fun activity, sports, in that area, the value to you might be so great. And the way in which the immorality manifests itself affects you very little. Or they're not immoral, they're just confused, they're just ignorant, they're just... Enjoy that part that you can enjoy with them. And this particularly relates to family. Family, what you have in common is shared memories, certain shared values that are personal. But they might be politically completely opposite from you, or they might be just not admirable people. Then you have to find a way to interact with them so you can benefit from the good things and not suffer from the bad. But if you suffer from the bad, you need to stop. So there's no context in which other people should inflict suffering on you and you should just take it. So somebody asked, sorry, I don't have the names affiliated with the questions. You make it sound like it's very easy to cut off family members if they're evil. I agree with you, but oftentimes there are gray areas, and cutting someone off will have repercussions with family members you do love. Yeah, I'm sorry if I come across as flippant about this. I'm trying to exaggerate the need to do it because too many people feel attached to their family members in irrational ways. So I can exaggerate the need. But yes, I know it's painful. I know it's hard. I know it's complicated. But I want to remind you, you only live once. You only live once. And every moment you waste on a family member who causes you pain is a moment you will not get back. And you've got to try to, Jennifer asked, why is it particularly hard for some people to objectively judge family members? You've got to be objective about the damage some people do to you. And it's hard to be objective about family because we're raised to believe, because of the collectivism that is we're raised to have it, which is family first. Family is the most important thing. It's all about family. Family is more important than work. Family is the most important thing. I mean, it's constant in our culture. And it's hard to separate yourself from that. So that people carry around family baggage in a way that they don't carry around baggage about any other thing. Remember that when you're growing up in the first 18 years of your life, you're completely dependent on the family. The family are the only people, in an intimate sense, that you're engaged with. So you've got these shared memories, shared associations. Many of your emotions are framed, because emotions are conclusions you came to a lot of times when you're young, when you're a child, and become automatized. Right? The emotion is a response to a particular conclusion you came to. So a lot of your emotions are tied to your childhood. A lot of your emotions are tied to particular events that happened when you were a child that you don't even remember, but the tie is there subconsciously. That connection is there. Right? And that's why you have this strong emotional tie to your family, particularly your immediate families, which is hard to separate, but it's partially in us, in the way our mind works and the way it's connected to our emotions. It's partially the collectivism taught from the outside. And then it's emotionally trying to separate or to figure out what the right level of separation is. And there is some value we get from family, so we have to also weigh that. And all of that makes it very hard. The emotions are strong, and you're right. Your family members might not be rational, so if you cut off from one, the others might not understand it. But again, part of what you need to do is say, tough, right? This person is bad for me. If you care about me, you'll understand my choice. I'm sorry you feel offended by it, but you shouldn't. It's not a judgment of you. I can't handle person X. I like you. I want to stay in touch with you. I don't want to stay in touch with them. Now, those are not easy conversations to have. But I'm just saying life is not about easy. It's about right. It's about doing what is in your long-term self-interest. And I wouldn't cut anybody off on a whim. I mean, it's something you need to think about. You need to try different solutions and figure out what works and what doesn't. But you gotta, if you care about your happiness, and you should, again, you only have one shot at this, you might as well make the most of it, then you've got to screen your family. You got to screen your friends. You got to screen your history. You got to get to the point where you're interacting with people who add to your life, who add value to your life, and not who drain your life. All right. That's a question about lies. This is somewhat related. Why are the smartest, most talented people in our society on the left? I guess this shows high IQ and being reality-oriented often don't go together. Perhaps having a high IQ makes it easier to separate yourself from reality. Well, I don't want to use IQ here because IQ is a very deceptive term. You don't know what IQ measures, and I don't know what IQ measures. I don't think anybody really knows. IQ measures primarily how good you are taking IQ tests. You cannot separate intelligence from reality. So we'll talk about being on the left a second, but you're saying high IQ and being reality-oriented often don't go together. How can you build a company? How can you build something that is value creation if you're detached from reality? How can you be great at anything? How can you produce great things? How can you make? How can you interact with people in a productive way? How can you build? How can you be a great architect if you're detached from reality? People on the left are not detached from reality. They might be detached from reality in their politics. But you cannot say that Bill Gates is detached from reality. You can't build Microsoft if you're detached from reality. You can't build Facebook if you're detached from reality. You can't build bridges, skyscrapers. And yet, my guess is most architects are leftists. So there's something else going on here that is not related to reality and not related to level of intelligence. Many high intelligence, or put it differently, many high performers are on the left. Many high performers, what does high performers mean? It means very productive, very connected to reality, are on the left. Well, then maybe the error about being on the left is not related to reality, to the ability to be attached to reality. Maybe something else is driving their attachment to the left. And to what extent do we understand the degree to which they're attached to the left? To what degree do we understand how leftist Zuckerberg is or Bezos is? I mean, the popular on the right is to say, oh, those guys are all leftists or socialists. Are they? Are they socialists? What are they? I don't think they're socialists. I think they're centrists, tilting left. I think part of that is motivated. I think that the two main drivers of that. One is altruism, morality. If you buy into conventional morality, the moral high ground is on the left. The right is not where morality lies. If altruism is about sacrifice, about caring about the poor, about focusing on the poor, about giving from yourself, about giving up some of yourself, then the morality is on the left. Somebody is asking about the debate. I'm going to do the debate tomorrow. I'm going to take segments of the debate and analyze them tomorrow. I didn't want to do it live stream. I didn't think it would be very productive to do it live stream. By the way, don't forget to like the show before you leave. I've seen a lot people are coming in and out, but they're not liking the show. 4 people have already not liked the show. One person gave me a thumbs down before the show even begun. That's a very informative thing to do, because he knew how bad I am. So feel free to like the show. Should be over 100 likes right now. There are only 88. We should be over 100. So let's get the like button up. And of course, you can use the super chat to ask questions. We have a few, but not many. Super chat is a great way to get engaged and to ask questions about these topics. We'll see if we even get to line. We might have to delay honesty for another show. But use the super chat, and don't forget to support the show at yaronbrookshow.com/support. Oh, I promoted liking the show. Somebody gave it a thumbs down. There we go. I haven't even talked about Trump today. What's the thumbs down for? Wow. Oh, because I said I didn't like the Confederacy. That's probably what it was. So what does it mean that they're on the left? Oh, I said I like Silicon Valley guys. That's what promoted it, right? What does it mean that they're on the left? It means that they take their altruism seriously, at least to some extent, up to a point, not too much. Right? And it means that they reject the right's obsession with religion. I mean, I completely sympathize with an engineer who says, I will never vote for a candidate who doesn't believe in evolution. Remember when the Republicans have their debates and the evolution question comes out, they either all hedge or they also say, oh no, I don't believe in evolution. That's just a theory, as if they know even what that means, to say something's just a theory. So people who are incredibly productive, people who are incredibly creative, people who are incredibly smart are on the left, not because they're detached from reality. It's because their morality shapes the way they think about politics. And altruism shapes the way they think about politics. And if you're captured by altruism, which most people are, you're not religious, then you're going to be on the left. And I don't think any of them on the hard left. I mean, some of them might be because they want to be, they want to be perceived as not racist and all this stuff. But I don't think Bezos or Zuckerberg or the guys at Google or Cook at Apple on the hard left, the far left, however you want to call it. They're all left of center. They basically believe in a mixed economy. And look, Why not believe in a mixed economy? Right? This is one of the things that, I mean, this is I think the hardest argument for capitalism, in a debate. And they never make this, but they should, right? I would make this. I mean, the argument I would make if I was against capitalism, I would say, why rock the boat? Life is pretty amazing. People are innovating, people are producing, people are creating. Life expectancy is going up. We're living better, healthier, cleaner, better lives. And we have a mixed economy. Why abandon a mixed economy? It's worked so well. It works well in America. It's worked well in Europe. It's just working so well. Why would I abandon it? Right? And that I think is the best argument against capitalism, is the status quo. Status quo is cool. It's good. Life is good. Look at the progress we've made with a mixed economy. Why would I abandon a mixed economy? Now, I know what my answer to that would be, but I understand why people hold that view. If you're in Silicon Valley and life's great, you're producing, you're creating, you're building, you're making stuff, you're earning a large amount of money, you get to use your mind. The people around you are productive people, they're all creative people, they're all fun people to work with. Life's pretty good. And yeah, there are problems over there, but we can solve them by creating more technology, by making more stuff, by making it better. Wow, everybody's leaving for the debate. Don't leave. The debate's not worth it. They're terrible. So I mean, Luther says we need a battle of pragmatism. Yeah, most people are pragmatists. And most people on the left, the kind of left that Silicon Valley primarily represents, are pragmatists. And many of them give in to the far left because the far left has them all high ground. Somebody says they wanted to see my live reaction video. My non-live reaction video is going to be pretty fun too. I'm going to be just as outraged in the non-fun reaction video. All right, so that's why the smartest, most talented people, let's see. So yes, a few years ago, the owners of The Simpsons completely eradicated an old episode featuring Michael Jackson as a guest voice. I know it's there to do as they please, but it seems silly and sad to me, thoughts. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not that attached. Let's assume Michael Jackson did what he's accused of doing, which is pedophilia. And I don't know if that's true or not true. I don't have the information. But let's assume he did do it. And this is a show targeted at children to some extent. Yeah, I mean, I can see why you would take it out. I would see why you would take it out. And particularly given that Michael Jackson is not, I know this is blasphemy, he's not Beethoven, he's not Thomas Edison, he's not even Steve Jobs. So on somebody like Michael Jordan, given that the audience is kids, I can see the evaluation changing and saying, you know what, we're not gonna use him. So it doesn't make me sad. I'm not sure if it was worth the effort, but maybe. Right. And again, I'm not justifying all. Oops, there goes Siri again. I'm not justifying all these things. So I guess the bottom line is, I don't think cancel culture, canceling people is a bad thing. It's just a question of who you're canceling. Some people should be canceled. Somebody says my channel IQ has gone up because the people who wanted to watch the debate have gone. Like 40 people left just from YouTube to go watch the debate. I mean, what the hell? It is true that I'm curious I'm mainly curious about Biden in how connected to reality is he going to be, particularly early on in the debate. To what extent is he there? Is he conscious? Is you have a sense of it being conscious? That's the only thing I'm curious about in the debate. All right. let's see. All right, let's do. You guys are still here, right? You're not going anywhere, so we might as well finish this topic, right, and do the second part of the topic. All right. So here's the question that Troy asks. My next question relates to lying and what is considered good and bad. I understand it's contextual, but for me, living my life as an objectivist, can you try and clarify? Is there a line of demarcation that allows lying? I've seen some older videos of your thoughts about it, of how psychologically damaging it is. I've also read Ayn Rand's article giving reasons for lying. For example, it is okay to betray your views if it would hurt your advancement in school or university, where a person of power over you can influence your past success in a field. And it's okay to lie to protect your own achievement. How is that different to the Islamic concept of taqiyya? I don't know how many of you know what taqiyya is. Taqiyya is basically you lie in order to achieve strategic advantage. You lie now so that in the future you can basically win. So you lie now so that in the future you can get your values. So taqiyya allows lying if, it's like pragmatism, right? If you can in some way benefit from the lie in the future, and it's okay to lie to your enemy in such contexts. So there's a sense in which it's a little like taqiyya if you limit this to your enemies, and if you clearly define what enemies are, and you make that definition rational. That is, I don't think you owe the truth to evil people trying to hurt you. So, I don't know, in the movies, or in real life, I think, people negotiate with terrorists. You free the hostages and we'll let you go. If the terrorists actually freed the hostages, you wouldn't let them go. You'd blow them to smithereens. And people say, oh, but next time, you don't let the bad guys go. So you can lie to somebody who is, by use of force or by use of irrational authority, trying to take a value that is justly yours from you. So somebody's trying to cheat you, steal from you. Or somebody's trying to evade justice, like the terrorist who wants to walk away after they release the hostages. You owe evil nothing. I mean, evil in the sense that evil that is destroying, that's actively working to destroy you. You owe them nothing. What you owe them is justice, which means what you owe them is their destruction. So the rapist who comes to your house asking who your wife is or your daughter is, or where you're hiding the Jews or whatever, right? You owe the rapist, the Nazi, nothing. Because they're using force. Indeed, it is a betrayal of your values, betrayal of integrity. To cooperate with them, to tell them the truth, to give them information that helps them perpetrate the crime that they want to perpetrate. It's anti your values. That is, it's immoral to tell them the truth. Now, where is the line? Well, I don't know that there's a line I can draw for you, but it has to be in the face of irrationality, in the face of somebody trying to take a value from you that you have earned. And that's the context in which Ayn Rand talked about at a university. If there's a professor who, if he knew what your view were, would irrationally give you a lower grade, would not evaluate you on the knowledge of the topic at hand, but would evaluate you irrationally, then it's okay to lie within the boundaries of that thing. It doesn't mean this person now, you can lie to them about anything. It doesn't give you that. It just gives you in the context of where they can take that value, where they can hurt you, where they can harm you, where your action is in defense of your value. That's the context in which you can lie. To a Nazi who is in power, assume, who is anti every one of your values, who is out to destroy everything about you, you can lie about everything. Because every piece of information for him is a potential, he could potentially use to destroy you. Right? So the line is the value at stake, that there's a value at stake, and that force or irrationality are being used against you by someone in a position of authority. So either force or irrationality from authority. Right? But you have to really be careful here, right? So, in a university context, you're trying to get a degree in an irrational world, particularly in an irrational setting. You're in a classroom where your particular point of view is going to be penalized, but where you don't owe anything. You don't owe the professor, in a sense, your point of view. That's not what this is about. But even if you have an irrational boss, it does not justify lying to an irrational boss. If the irrational boss is, lying about something related to work, because you're not just working for this boss. You're working for a particular company. You're working in a particular context. And even though he could penalize you, there's lots of things you can do to try to improve your situation, including walking away and going work somewhere else. And lying to your boss, there's certain things you might be able to lie about, but lying about anything related to work is going to come back and hurt you. It's going to hurt you with other people at work. It's going to hurt you with your own ability to really devote yourself to your career, to really devote yourself to the work that you're doing. School is finite. You get out of there. But work is not. Work is a career. It's the rest of your life. And if you start creating this cognitive dissonance that I talk about in my lectures about lying, if you start creating this compartmentalization, if you start creating these divisions within your career, you're going to destroy it. So if you're in a position where you think the only way you can survive in this job is to lie, then leave. Go find a different job. Or, talk to the boss's boss, go through channels, try to get a different boss in the company if you want to stay with the company. But don't let lying creep into your work. It is unbelievably destructive. The same, by the way, is true in your personal life. You don't lie to your wife. Because if you do, you've created a barrier between her and you. You've created a separation between you. There's reality and there's your wife. Your wife is not one with reality. And if you do that, you're going to find it is going to deplete your ability to have an intimate relationship with her. It's going to make you lie more often. It's going to the relationship is going to deteriorate dramatically. Now, people always say to me in this context, well, what about when my wife asks me if she looks fat in this dress? Now, there's a certain element of sexism in this question, but the fact is that it's a question many of us men, husbands, get asked. Should I tell her the truth? If she's asking seriously, if she actually wants to know, if this is not a game that you play, then absolutely you should tell her the truth. Because if she does look if she does look not the way she wants to look in this dress, and she's asking you as an objective outsider to evaluate it, then she should be happy that you tell her that so that she can fix it, either by dieting or by changing dresses. Now, if it's a game you play, right, where it's a question she's asking but she doesn't want the real answer, and you know that, and you've been married a long time, and you know that's the game, then you play the game. But then it's a game. It's not about reality. And of course, there are ways of saying you look fat in that dress and not being nice about it. Right? But at the end of the day, if it's a real question, then it deserves a real answer. And not every answer in life is an answer somebody wants to hear. It might be an answer they don't want to hear. Honey, I have a headache is not the right answer. It's a confusing answer. It creates separation. It destroys intimacy. It destroys your ability long-term to really love. Honey, I don't want to have sex tonight. I'm anxious. I'm pissed off. I just don't feel like it. Whatever is an honest answer. And why is that a problem? Why should that be a problem for the man, for the husband or the wife to say that? So, this whole issue of white lies, you have to be cautious of it. Again, there's a context in which you can lie. So, if it's harmless and if it's none of another person's business. How are you doing today? And you've just had a horrible day, but you don't want to get into it. I'm fine. I mean, it's a lie, but it's not, it doesn't mean anything. And they're not really asking, how are you? Or there's some things, none of somebody's business. But the ideal when something's not somebody's business is to tell them, it's none of your business. I mean, try to avoid what people think of as white lies. Now, being honest does not mean telling everything that you can think of something. It doesn't mean giving all the information. Again, it's contextual. How much you give is in context. Oh, Frank is back because he says the debate sucks, but more people are leaving for the debate. I mean, lies generally are not limited. They avalanche, they evolve, they grow. So somebody asks, are white lies okay if you work in sales? For example, if I'm selling dresses and a woman comes in, tries on an expensive dress, turns to me and says, wow, I love it. What do you think? I personally think it's hideous. And I personally think it's hideous. I mean, wow. I mean, that's a good question. Do you want a long-term relationship with this customer? I mean, I don't think you have to say it's hideous to steer in a different direction. I think you would look better in this other dress. She'll get the point. Right? So, somebody says they'd rather watch a debate of Yaron with a right-winger. We're trying to arrange that. We're trying to have me debate Yoram Hazony, who is the writer of The Virtue of Nationalism and is a big shot in the conservative nationalist movement. And so when the world goes back to semi-normal, expect that we will debate at the University of Texas in Austin. That is being planned. He's already agreed. We've got the venue. People have already been willing to fund it. So that'll be me against a right-winger, a nationalist right-winger. So I think you have to avoid lying in your profession, in your life, but including in your professional career, including in sales. Now, again, you don't have to provide all the information. So, is she really asking what you think? Do you have a long-term relationship with you? Are you going to expect me to sell them any dresses? Does your opinion matter? Right? All of those things are relevant to your decision. But I would never say, if you thought it was hideous, I would never say, oh, I think it's fantastic. What do you gain from that? And what if she goes home and people tell her the dress is hideous, she doesn't trust your taste anymore? Somebody asked if all right, so you want to avoid lying. Stefan says he turned on the debate and didn't last through the first question. Came here to restore reason. Good. Good. Well, as I said, I will show you the highlights of the debate tomorrow so that you don't have to watch the whole thing. You can just watch the highlights with me. With me commenting and making fun of them. All right. Do I believe in unconditional love? No. No, I don't know what that means. Love is a response to values. Well, that conditions it. If it's not a value, how can I respond to it? So, by its very essence, if you love something, you love it for a reason. You love it because of something, because it represents a value to you in some way. And that conditions it. As soon as that value goes away, the love would go away as well. And people pretend that they love unconditionally. But I think it's fake then. It's a lie. And the worst kind of lie, by the way. And, this is the essence of Ayn Rand's view of honesty. The worst kind of lie is to lie to yourself. It's to reject reality in yourself, to accept unfacts, untruths in your own cognition, in your own life, in your own values. You should do like John Galton, replace the debate with your show. Oh, I wish I had that power to project my show onto the debate. Do a John Galt speech instead of the debate. All right, Frank's question from last time. An objective way of listening to an opera is with a recording or a concert of the opera with no costumes, no scenery, no story. Then you have to focus on the music and singing more than anything else. I don't think that's actually true. Now, you can learn a lot about an opera from listening to it without the story, without the scenery, without the costumes, particularly if you don't understand the language. And the music could be beautiful and everything, but to properly evaluate the greatness of an opera, the music and the singing have to be integrated into the story and the emotion derived in the text. So it has to be an integrated whole. And you cannot appreciate the true genius of opera unless you have the story, the text, the costumes, the scenery, the staging, and the music and the singing. All you can do in evaluating an opera when you only listen to a recording and you don't know the language is to say the music and the singing are beautiful. Amazing. But you can't evaluate it qua opera. Qua opera, it is musical theater. It is the putting into music of specific emotions related to a specific text and a specific story. Right. So I think that to truly be objective about an opera, you have to have the whole thing. And of course, that was the theory, a theory that both the two greatest composers of opera ever, Verdi and Wagner, held. That opera was not just a series of cute songs. that opera was theater, that opera was an integration of music, singing, and story, and staging. And that's why Wagner built a whole theater just for his operas, and staged his operas in a particular way, and insisted on control in every aspect of the staging, because he viewed it as a completely integrated art. And I agree with that. Now, and I think any opera certainly from the mid 1900s should be viewed like that. But I think even previous operas, if staged and done correctly, elevate them. All right, Ashley says, a lot of people, when they talk about unconditional love, don't really want to do away with conditions, but have merely been taught the wrong kinds of conditions. Yes, they've been taught the wrong kind of conditions. They've also been taught that unconditional makes the love more meaningful, because love in the face of sacrifice. I mean, Jesus sacrificed himself and loves us, the object of his sacrifice. And that is the ultimate in love. Unconditional love. Love you're willing to sacrifice everything for. And sacrifice is the essential. Right? Not to love a value, to love something that makes you better, to love as selfish, which is the true meaning of love. But we've been taught that unconditional love is the greatest form of love, because to make it conditional is to make it egoistic, to make it selfish. Condition based on what? Based on my values. Oh, well, love is dependent on your values. That's pretty selfish of you. Yes. So people say it, but they don't understand what they're saying. But people also have the wrong conditions, and the conditions are sacrificial conditions, anti-values conditions. See one of the last exchanges between James and Cheryl in Atlas for unconditional love. Yes. Yes. He wants unconditional love. She understands that that's impossible. It's just meaningless. It's anti-values, anti-everything, anti-life. Andrew asks, envy is a disease on moral judgment. Right after Steve Jobs died, people rushed to redirect focus from his achievement to inflated criticism. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's true of everybody. Everybody who achieves anything, immediately there's this attempt to undercut them, to show they're just human. I'm not interested in the just human side. What I'm interested, even if they have it, what I'm interested in is the achievement. That's where, because why do we need heroes? Well, it's an issue of justice towards them, but more importantly, it's an issue of inspiration to us. And having heroes is inspiring for us. And you have to be able to separate it out, the heroic part of somebody's life, and put aside the part of his life that's not commendable, that's not good. And focus on the heroic and get the spiritual values that you can from that heroic part of his life. And you need to separate it out. And it's doable, and it's important to do. And it's an act of justice to do it, because it recognizes the good and the valuable to you. Ashley says, many people I work with resonate with the idea of love being a response to values once they hear it, but they have been taught superficial conditions like, what have you done for me lately? Yes, people have a very superficial view of values, and people have a very superficial view of what it means to have conditions. So as he's saying, they think condition means, well, if they haven't done for me anything lately, that they're not of value to me. But what have you done for me lately? What have you done, particularly when it comes to love, is not, what you do for me is not in any particular action, in any particular given point in time. If you really love somebody, it's because their mere existence provides what you've done for me lately, right? What you've done for me lately is exist. That's what real love is. When love is earned, the other person's mere existence is what they've done for you lately. It's the value that you receive from them. It's not a tit for tat. It's not a list of laundry things that they represent for you and they have to check them off. It's their integration, it's their being, which reflects your values, which inspires you, which makes you a better person. And thus you love them. What they do to you lately is make you feel better about the world, not because of any particular action they take, but because of the sum of the actions that they take and the sum of their being. But that's conditional. It's not conditional on a particular action. It's conditional on their being who they are. And if they were somebody else, you wouldn't love them, even if they did, in some sense, all the same things, if that were possible. All right. Somebody says, shouldn't Trump be destroyed in an honest debate? Well, it depends what you mean by destroyed. And destroyed for whom? I think Trump is destroyed every time he opens his mouth. But you have to have a standard. And most people watching debate don't have a standard. And, people are going to evaluate Trump, people who support Trump particularly, are going to evaluate Trump based on how tough he was, or based on how, how anti-leftist he was, or based on how intimidating he was, or based on how well he got away with his lying. Frank says Biden's elocution is pretty good. That's all he has to do, is he has to appear to be conscious and talk in complete sentences. If he does that, he wins the debate, in my view. Anyway, I am off. I'm going to go get some dinner, and I'll probably watch part of the debate, and then tomorrow I'll watch the whole thing and pick out the pieces I want to talk about, or discover the debate was so pathetic there's actually nothing to talk about. And then I'll change the topic of the show tomorrow. Oh, the person who gave me a thumbs down came back. I've got 5 thumbs down again. All right, please, before you leave the show today, don't forget to like the show. If you want to ask another significant dollar amount question, please feel free to do that. We're pretty low on Super Chat today, but it's not too bad given that somebody paid me $1,000 to do this show. We're in good shape, but still would be good to get some more Super Chat stuff. But you can support the show in a variety of different ways. This is one way. You can also do it via yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can do it on Patreon. You can do it at Subscribestar. You can do it at Locals. And again, don't forget to like the show before you leave. And don't forget to share. All right. See you tomorrow. We'll talk about the debate tomorrow. And we're going to come up with some interesting ideas about shows in the near future. I like these more positive shows in spite of the fact that fewer people watch them. To hell with it, right? I should do what I enjoy doing. And if you're willing to support it financially, I'll keep doing positive shows. If I only get money for the negative stuff, then I might just retire. All right, guys, have a great evening. Don't get too upset by the debate. Don't let it get you down. Life is too amazing, too beautiful to let a couple of disgusting politicians get you down. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. Bye, everybody. Have a great evening.